is like a battlefield.
There's a battle for the soul of America.
We can't let him tear the kingdom down.
This is no game. This is war.
Flesh and blood, but it's between the bad and good. We can't stop until the trumpet sounds. This is war, not a game we're playing. This is a war.
The only question is, which side will you be on? It's time now for a call to decision with Pastor Butch Paugh.
Satan's armies come to kill. This is war.
Hello, my friends, and welcome. This is Pastor Butch Paugh, the 15th day of April 2011, and welcome to the broadcast wherever you are. We're going to bring up in a few minutes our guest, Lindsey Williams, who always makes quite a stir when he comes by. Many folks don't agree with him. Many people think Lindsey Williams is a fraud. You think what you want. I have to go by what I see and what I've observed and experienced in the past with the people that I know. I don't know everything about Lindsey Williams. Is know, I'm sure. No one else does. But the information he's given out to me over the last several years has about all come to pass just like he said it would. So I don't know for sure why people think that Lindsey Williams is not the real thing. It makes no difference why they think it. The truth is, he lays it on the line and tells the truth, and everything he says comes to pass. It's time, folks, that we quit trying to find fault with people and take a stand with those who are trying to warn us and try to warn others. Folks, this guy has a story that you've heard probably before. We do know that he has a lot to tell us about what's going on. But before I forget one more thing, I must make mention of this. Starting May 2nd, and perhaps even earlier than that, we will be going on WFLI 1070 AM in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It'll be a live broadcast every night, 5 nights a week, starting in Chattanooga, Tennessee, prayerfully before May 2nd, but no later than May 2nd. So those live in Chattanooga will be hear us again on that station no later than May 2nd. So that's just a good thing to get some good news. But like I said, our guest tonight is not a stranger to most of you, I'm sure. If you're new listener tonight, you need to just pay attention. Lindsey Williams has the background to say what he's saying and proof that he's saying it right. And not only does he say it right, folks, what he says is true because it's happening. Because he's telling the truth and we know it's happening. To call him a fraud today is like, it's idiotic. That's all I can say. But Lindsey, welcome to the program.
Pastor Butch, thank you for allowing me the privilege of being back with you today. And you're right. Everything that the elite have told me for 35 years has happened exactly like they said it. And Pastor, you know as well as I do that there is no possible way that any one human being on the face of this earth could be right every single time for 35 years.
That's right. I agree.
Except that he was getting it from the people. So let me make a statement up front right now on the program. What I have to say tonight does not come from tea leaves or divine revelation. I am not a prophet. The only way that a little insignificant, unknown missionary flying around out in the bush of Alaska could have ever been put in the position of sitting with the elite of the world for 3 years was by the providence of God. And I think the reason I was put there was so I can be on your program tonight and many other programs that I've been on recently, because I've been able to tell you what's going to happen tomorrow according to what the elite had planned to do. Now, think back with me for a moment or two, if you will, Pastor Butch, and let's just go over a few things, and then I'll give you the very latest, which is very startling. But I'm sure that your audience, I have been allowed to be in their homes enough that they know that for 3 years' time I lived with the elite. I was invited as their chaplain, have kept in touch with 2 of those individuals over many, many years. Many of you thought that Lindsey Williams was just a big fraud out there until recently I was able to give you the names of one of these individuals. You can look up and see who he was. Everything I've said for 35 years about that man was true. You know that he died 84 years of age. His name was Mr. Ken Fromm. He was senior executive with Atlantic Richfield. As long as he lived, I could not give his name out of courtesy to the gentleman who had given me so much information over the years. But think of a few things that these people have said to me that has come to pass exactly like they said it. And you wish tonight that you had believed 3 years ago, but many of you didn't. And I'm very sorry you didn't, because you're the loser. You remember that about 3 years ago, I came on your program, Pastor Butch, And I said that I had just been told by one of the elite. Now, you know who he is.
Yes.
You've heard his name. And you better look it up for yourself if you have any question. And I told you that this individual had said to me one night when I was just utterly frustrated after a conversation that he and I had had. And I asked him, I said, how can I possibly keep food on my dinner table in light of what is going to happen in the world, according to what you're saying, that is planned behind closed doors? And he said, Chaplain, there's only one thing that will ever maintain its purchasing power. And I said, what is that? And he said, it's our currency. And I said, what do you mean, your currency? He said, Chaplain, if it's written on a piece of paper, it's worth the paper it's written on. He said, there's only one thing you can depend on. He said, there's only one thing that's going to go up. Now, real estate's gone down. The dollar, oh, my goodness, did you see what the dollar closed at yesterday afternoon? 74.61. I mean, it's so startling. Every financial analyst that I've talked to in the last few days is literally shaking in their shoes because they see a complete landslide fall of the dollar. I mean, it's going over the precipice. Okay, so this individual said to me, Chaplain, there's only one way to spare your assets. Now, remember how long this was ago. About 3 years ago, I was on your program, and I said, what is that? He said, gold and silver. You could have bought it for $600 an ounce, gold back in those days. You could have bought silver for between $12 and $14 an ounce. And Pastor Butch, I came on your program, and I said it to everybody. I don't care who you are, what nationality you are, what color your skin it is. I said to everybody, I said, I have just been told that the only thing that's going to maintain purchasing power is gold and silver. I said, you go out there and buy every ounce of it you can. You get every piece you can afford. I said, it's the only thing you can trust to maintain its purchasing power. Do you know what it closed at today? Yeah, that's right. You could have bought it for about $650 back when I told you to go and buy it. Just a few moments ago, I checked it. It closed this afternoon, $1,480. Folks, if you had taken the advice, not of Lindsey Williams, you don't take my advice. Now, my advice is not worth anything. You take the advice of the elite who are doing this. They plan it behind closed doors. Nothing ever happens by chance. If you had taken the advice of an elitist who told me, merely out of respect for me giving 3 years of my life as their chaplain, if you had taken that man's advice, do you realize that you still would have the purchasing power of your dollar? Because you could have bought it for $600 back then, and do you realize that you could have made 2 1/2 the value in only a matter of 2.5 to 3 years? Look at silver. I begged you back when you could have bought silver for $5 and $6 an ounce. I said, I've just been told by the elite it's the only thing you can trust. You know what silver closed at this afternoon? $42.50. Do you realize that your house has gone down in value? Your gasoline that you get at the gas pump has gone up in price. Your groceries are going through the roof. Your hardware store is charging you more. You're paying more taxes. Everywhere you turn, there's only one thing, and it's what the elite told me back then. Now I'm going to go to a second item.
Now, Lindsey, I want to say one thing real quick. I just looked at something today that I bought, 10 years ago maybe, silver. I bought what they call a nickel pack of silver. I believe it was. It's $500. It's worth over $4,500 now. Now,
yes.
How's that been increased?
That's what the elite told me was going to happen.
It happened, just like you said.
Pastor Butch, how could I have possibly known that had it not been for an elite who told me that they were going to do it? There's no way I would have had any knowledge of this. And then you remember that 2.5 years ago, I came on your program and I was laughed at. And I'm glad you laughed at me, because later on you called me a prophet. And I said the price of crude oil is going to go from $147 a barrel to $50 a barrel. I was actually laughed at. And of all people, I was laughed at on the most prominent person on this network. By somebody else, not by him. not by the talk show host, but by a person that happened to be on with me that day. I was laughed at, and they said, "Oh, Chaplain, that can't possibly happen." And exactly 2 months later, it went down to not only $50 a barrel, crude oil went down to $43, $44 a barrel. And I told you at the time, now think about it, Pastor Butch, you have it in your archives. In fact, one other talk show host on this network pulled it up the other day and played it just so that people would say, hey, Lindsey Williams was telling you exactly what the elite said back then. I said it's going to stay at that price, somewhere around $50 to $80 a barrel. And it's in your archives. I said it's going to stay there for 2.5 years.
That's right.
And it did. Exactly like they told me it was going to happen. And then I came back on a number of months ago, and I said it's time for the crude oil to go up. I've just been told it's going to $200 a barrel. And lately, a lot of the newsletter writers are saying it's going to $300 a barrel. No, it's not going to $300 a barrel. It's going to $200 a barrel. You just watch, and you'll see it. And I said it's going up to gas pump. And then, about 6 months ago, I came on your program. I came on many other programs across the country. I said, I've just been told there's going to be a crisis in the Middle East. It is not going to take place with Iran. I said it. You heard me say it, Pastor Butch.
Yes, it is.
In fact, I remember very well that Dr. Stan Monteith asked me one day, he said, Chaplain Williams, would you please go and ask your elitist friend if we're going to have a conflict with Iran? And I went to him. I called him on the phone. I said, is this conflict in the Middle East going to be with Iran? He said, no, Chaplain, it's not going to be with Iran. I said, who is it going to be with? He wouldn't tell me. Where did it start? Exactly 4 months later, I said in 4 to 5 months it'll happen. It started in Egypt.
Hang on to the break, Lindsey. Lindsey, hang on to the break. That thought. Let's break the break. The phone calls 800-259-5791. No point in taking your head in the sand and denying it. It's real. It's happening. We're seeing it happen. He's told the truth before, and I'm living proof of that because I listened to what he said and I prepared somewhat, and as best I could, and I saw his exposure of what's going on come true one step at a time, just as he said it. I remember when he told us a couple of years ago that oil was going to go down to $50 a barrel, and I remember people laughing about it. As he laughed when he told me years before that it was going to go to $4 to $5 a gallon. Everyone laughed about that. And it did do that. Now he's talking about oils that's going to go to about $200 a barrel, which means the price of gas will be around $6 to $7 a gallon. Now, I guess it's up just about even with England and with Europe now. They're a little bit higher than that, actually. $6 to $7 a gallon will put a big hurting, folks, on all of us to get around, to go to work, take care of our personal needs. And what it's going to do to the prices of everything else, I don't care what it is, from food to clothing, everything moves now by truck. When that happens, I can guarantee you that we're going to pay so much more than we can ever believe. Joe Salente said that next year will be America's economic Armageddon. I see it happening, my friends. I really do. And I pray that you're not sitting back, sucking your thumb, watching TV, waiting for something to happen good to save you from this, because it's not going to happen unless you prepare yourself. Go ahead, Lindsey, with some more thoughts.
Pastor Butch, I was appalled on Tuesday of this week when I heard a gentleman say something. Now, I'm not endorsing this man. I'm just merely telling you a fact of what he said. He was on one of the most prominent radio talk shows in America, and it was Donald Trump. And as many of you know, he's thinking about the possibility of running for the presidency next time around. But he said something on that radio talk show that appalled me. He said, 12 people control the price of crude oil every day. I didn't know what to say. I was startled. I hardly knew. I said, Donald, where did you get that? How do you know that? I said, I knew this years ago. I knew it 35 years ago. I said it in my book, Energy Non Crisis, that the price of crude oil is controlled on any given day by people. It's probably not more than 12. And when he said 12 people control the price of crude oil, let me tell you what I thought about, Pastor Butch, and then I'm going to give you some startling facts tonight. Number one, I'm going to tell you tonight where the next crisis in the Middle East is going to be. No, I know. Now, please don't laugh this time, because you might have laughed last time when I told you there was going to be a crisis in the Middle East, and 4 months later it happened in Egypt, then it spread to Libya. I'm going to tell you the next nation where it's going to happen. But I'm even going to tell you where to go and look it up for yourself along with what I've been told. And then I'm going to tell you about a chart that I was just sent that is going to curl your toenails. No, I mean literally. Folks, you must listen to the elite. They know what they're talking about, and they're doing things. Donald Trump said 12 people control the price of crude oil on any given day. It reminded me of 1984. Now, my book, Energy Non-Crisis, was written in 1980. The Transalaska oil pipeline, when I was a chaplain to the elite, was 1974, 5, and 6. And in 1984, I was sitting in the living room of my house in Castile, Alaska, where I was a missionary at the time, and I had a phone call one day, and I can use his name now because he's passed away. Mr. Ken Fromm called me on the phone that day, and he said, Chaplain, do you want the world to think you're a prophet? Those were just his words. And I said, Ken, what do you mean? He said the price of crude oil is going from $32 a barrel. That's where it was. Price of crude oil in 1984 was $32 a barrel. He said it's going to $10 a barrel. And I thought that would be the end of the world. I said, Ken, what do you mean? You can't do that. I said, you're going to take... He said, Chaplain, come on now. He said, get off of it. He said, you sat in our board meetings. You know who controls the price of a barrel of crude oil. He said, you know OPEC has nothing to do with it. He said, we control it. And I said, Ken, why are you taking the price of crude oil to $10 a barrel? Folks, you ready? You better listen. He said, Chaplain, we're taking it there to $10. And by the way, they wound up taking it to $9 a barrel. You'll remember, go back in your history books to 1984, $32 a barrel. They went to $9 a barrel. And we thought it was going to destroy the world back in those days. And he said, Chaplain, the reason we're taking it there is to teach OPEC a lesson. Did you get this? He said, to teach OPEC a lesson. I said, the oil-producing nations of the world and of the Middle East, and you're going to teach them a lesson? He said, Chaplain, we have to show them that they have nothing to do with the price of a barrel of crude oil.
Okay, hang on that thought. Hang on that thought. Don't forget it. Back at the break, folks, for another long segment, plus your phone calls. Don't you all go away. Folks, we're talking tonight to Lindsey Williams, Chaplain Lindsey Williams, who has told you his story before many times, how he got to know what he knows. And I share with you some more information that I guarantee you're going to see come to pass. How quickly, I don't know. But we know now that gas is going to go up between $6 and $7 a gallon. That is absolutely going to destroy the economy of this country, what's left of. The inflation at everywhere is going to go up to the point where your paycheck will be almost totally worthless. And Lindsey, I want you to finish your story about the OPEC, but also I'd like you to tell the folks again about what the paycheck's going to mean in a year or so when you walk into the grocery store. But go ahead and finish about OPEC first.
Right now in California, I know my son was over there in Los Angeles just the other day. Gasoline is $4.83 for diesel.
Wow.
Illinois, you're paying $4.30 for regular gasoline today. The World Bank said this past week, I was appalled. I had trouble believing I was hearing what I was hearing because I was told this by Mr. Fromm back over 2 years ago, and I said it on your program, if you remember, Pastor Butch. This past week, the World Bank said we need a new world reserve currency. Yes, this week. Yeah, for the past 2 weeks they've been talking about it. This week they officially announced we need a new world reserve currency. The dollar can no longer be used. What? You remember, Pastor Butch, that on your program, back approximately 2 years ago, I had just been on the phone with one of these individuals, and I came on your program, and I told the following. I said that I had just been told that a sign was whenever the Federal Reserve begins to buy its own debt, it's the end of the dollar. And Pastor Butch, I said it right here on your program. I said it on Alex Jones' program. I said it on many other programs that I had just been told when the Federal Reserve begins to buy its own debt, it's the end of the dollar. Well, we haven't seen the end of the dollar yet, but we're getting very close because their timeline is the end of 2012. Mark my words. You'll see it happen. Now, there are some ways that you can spare yourself if you will take action. You could have taken action 2 2.5 years ago when I told you where gold and silver prices were going. And you could still have your assets today if you'd have put them in there. And I hope all of you listened. Now, I want to tell you what's going to happen from this point on. You'll remember that approximately 6 months ago, I came on your program, Pastor Butch, and I said within 4 to 5 months there's going to be a conflict in the Middle East.
Yes.
It happened 4 months later, just exactly as this person had told me. It first broke out in Egypt. And when it happened, everybody thought, oh my goodness, this is just isolated. Then it went to Libya. Oh, then people said, wait a minute, something's happening over there. Then you saw it spread to Yemen and Bahrain and Syria. And then they had a day of rage declared for Saudi Arabia. And one country after the other began all of a sudden out of a clear blue sky to see the Muslim Brotherhood bring in conflict of every kind imaginable. You remember on the last time I had the privilege of being on your show, Pastor Butch, I said that this was going to spread through the entire Middle East and that the last country that would have a problem would be Saudi Arabia. And at the time that Saudi Arabia had a problem, the price of crude oil would reach somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 a barrel because Saudi Arabia supplies more crude oil to America than any other country.
By the way, Lindsey, the Saudi Arabian oil minister said the same thing just the other day. It would go $200 a barrel. He said the same thing.
Yes. I mean, what the elite told me that I said on your program 6 months ago is being said, as you just stated, by the minister at Saudi Arabia.
That's right.
But 6 months ago, I told you that the elite told me that. They had it planned back then. Now, what's going to happen from this point on? You will see, you ready? Here it is. Mark it down. Put it beside your calendar. The next country that's going to have a problem is Yemen. Watch it. You're going to see it. And here it is. If you want to look it up for yourself, go to the New York Times. Yeah, they leaked it. I had said just recently that Yemen would probably be right there at the top of the list. Well, I'm telling you where it's going now. Yemen, the president, Ali Abdullah Saleh, is to be thrown to the crocodiles. Those were the exact words that the New York Times used just the other day, and they said the information was leaked to them. Who leaked it? The elite. Some of the same people that tell me things. And the New York Times was given it. And this is going to be your next, you had Egypt, then you had Libya, now you're going to have Yemen. Mark my words, it's going to spread to Syria, Bahrain, finally to Saudi Arabia. Every bit of this is planned in advance. They knew it. I told it to you 6 months ago that they said it was going to happen. Why? Because the president of Yemen, they don't have any use for him anymore. He's thrown out in the wash water, so to speak. And you're just beginning to see now, okay, here it is. Please watch listen to the newscast. Watch what the World Bank is saying. Watch what you're seeing out there from the leading news writer articles from Wall Street. I just saw it within the past two weeks. I never saw it before that. Here it is, default. Do you remember that I said this on your program when I was on there last time, that the dollar was going to default, the T-bills would default, that
yes.
We had no way of maintaining the national debt? $14 trillion is unsustainable. We can't even pay the interest on the national debt anymore, especially since Japan had its earthquake. And for the first time, Pastor Butch, you probably have seen it. I've seen it on numerous very prominent newsletter articles, and I was told that months ago we are going to have a default on the dollar. When's it going to happen? After you see Saudi Arabia have a problem. The price of crude oil is going to go to the place that the dollar will basically collapse. When that happens, you'll be begging the World Bank, the IMF, to give you a new currency. At the same time, the price of gold is going to $300. And okay, folks, mark this down. Put it beside your calendar. You're going to see gold go to $300 an ounce. You're going to see silver go between $50 and $100 an ounce because they're going to back the new world order currency with gold. You mean
gold will go to $3,000, not $300, but $3,000.
$3,000.
There you go. Okay, there you go. Okay, right.
and you're going to, I've got so much to say, he only got a few minutes left, $3,000 an ounce on gold. You're going to see silver go between $50 and $100 an ounce, because they will back the new world currency with gold and silver. And now they're talking about a default of the American dollar. When China and Russia made their agreement for the sale of crude oil, they said we'll not use the dollar. Now Saudi Arabia is having a real problem with the dollar. We are coming down to some events in the Middle East that are going to startle you in coming days when you see one royal family after the other deposed. You hear this, you're going to see them deposed just like you saw Mubarak in Egypt, just like you're going to see Gaddafi in Libya. You're going to see the royal family in Yemen, the head of the royal family, Allah Abdullah Sealy. You're going to see him go. They'll have to flee to other countries from their own people. The Muslim Brotherhood are being supported by the elite of the world, and one nation after the other in the Middle East is going to have this problem because the elite of the world are supporting the Muslim Brotherhood for the purpose of bringing this about. It's all for the purpose of bringing in the New World Order according to their timeline, which is the end of 2012. And when it happens, you had better be prepared. I am not saying this to frighten you. I'm saying it just like I told you years ago to buy gold and silver when you could have bought it for $600 and $700 an ounce. I told you that you'd have plenty of food on the grocery store shelves. Pastor Butch, you heard me say it right here on your program.
Yes.
And yet so many other talk shows were saying, oh, we're going to have a food shortage, we're going to have a food shortage. I said, no. I've been told that there's not going to be any shortage of groceries on the grocery store shelf. I said that 2 years ago. I put it in my 6 DVD series that was produced about 2 years ago. You can't say I didn't say it back then. I've got it right there to prove it. The DVD series was made about a year and a half ago, and I said you're not going to have any shortages on the grocery store shelves, but I said you'll probably go hungry. And some people said, what do you mean, Chaplain Williams? I said, your currency is going to devalue to the point that when you go to the grocery store, you'll have to carry a wheelbarrow load of paper to the grocery store to buy your groceries. Do you realize if you had bought gold and silver back when the elite told me where it was going, that you would have no problem buying those groceries whatsoever? Because when you get gold to $3,000 an ounce and silver to $75 to $100 an ounce, all you got to do is turn it into new currency and be able to buy anything you want to buy. Did you know what Utah did? 2 weeks ago, I think it was, maybe a week and a half ago. Utah, the state of Utah, passed a law that currency or gold and silver that has been minted by the United States Mint must be accepted for barter and trade in the state of Utah. Grocery stores, hardware stores, you buy an automobile, the dealers are required by law in Utah to accept your gold and silver. Now, they haven't found out a way to carry this out yet, but they will. And you could have bought anything you wanted if you had just listened to the elite. Listen to what they have to say. Now, Pastor Butch, did you catch that about Utah just recently?
I sure did. Jim and Georgia, come on in.
Evening, guys.
Evening.
Pastor Lindsey, 2 questions. Have you heard anything about them saying that they might make possession of gold and silver illegal like they did back in the 20s or 30s under Roosevelt, and if you don't turn it in, you get arrested? And secondly, have you heard about them arm-twisting our Congress into putting further restrictions on us about growing our own food? And I'll hang up and listen.
All right, Lindsey, have you heard anything about outlawing gold and silver?
There are some people talking about the gold part of it. Silver, I would positively say every indication I've gotten is that they will not touch silver. Gold, I can't get an answer, so I don't know, but I do know this. They're not going to touch their own currency.
Okay, how about the other question?
As far as food is concerned, that's completely out of any of the conversations we've ever had.
Okay, all right. Lindsey, we're down to the last minute. What do you want to say?
Set your spiritual house in order before you do anything else. Get down on your knees after this radio broadcast. If there's any question in your mind whatsoever about your relationship with Jesus Christ, if you have any doubts as to whether you're born again or not, believe God's Word. Trust Christ as your Savior. Know that you're born again.
Amen.
Your house must be on a solid rock before all of this lets loose. If it's on sinking sand, you're in trouble. The greatest advice I can give